Hello, how are you?
Oh, hello. Didn't expect you here. No one comes here. Anyways, you're here now. This man, this is a story of this guy he's like a pastor. He's in a convenience store, sitting there in line, and there's this guy in front of him who's about to pay for his stuff. He gets the feeling all of a sudden, I'm gonna pay for this guy's food, that he has some bread and milk and some other stuff. So he taps the guy on the shoulder in front of him. Hey, he says, look, you don't need to turn around, you don't need to look at me, but I'm gonna pay for you, and God bless you. I hope this is somehow a blessing in your life. So he pays for the guy's stuff, then he pays for his own stuff. The guy never turns around to look back at him. He moves on. Years later, he comes back to the town that he was in at the time when he was in that convenience store. He was preaching at a church. After the church service, this man comes up to him and he says, I'd like to thank you. And the man says, for what? About 9 years ago, I was in a convenience store with my wife and my children. And at the time, this was one of the roughest periods in my life. We had lost everything we had. Our whole lives were totally devastated. We had decided that day we were gonna take the whole family minivan and go out to a deserted area. We would all commit suicide. Me, the wife, the kids. We had gone to the convenience store to buy one last meal for our 2 kids. When I was waiting in line at the register, I didn't know how I was gonna pay for it. That's when you tapped me on the shoulder. After that, we loaded up the van. We drove out to the area that we were gonna commit suicide, and we couldn't do it. A few weeks later, we started going to church. We eventually got saved, and it was you that prevented us from committing suicide. We are the suicide generation. I mean, daily we're hearing more and more about suicides and suicide killings and people taking their own lives. This thing seems to be on the rise, on the increase, like people are doing it more and more. We're more and more getting wrapped up in death, constant death surrounding us everywhere. Let me read you something. This comes from Lecrae, who is just a great musician. One of the lines from his songs goes, but give life, love a wife like he loved the church, without seeing how many hearts we can break first. I want to be like you in every way, so if I gotta die every day, unworthy sacrifice. You and me, right now, we're gonna talk about Christian suicide. It is God's calling on your life and on mine. You don't believe me. You're looking at me like, ooh, he crazy. Listen, you don't believe me. That's fine. Let's talk about the Bible. Luke 9 says, and he said to all, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. If you've spent any amount of time in Christian circles, the word cross gets thrown around like 98% of the time. Let's step back from our familiarization with that word and think about the fact that for the ancient Romans, the cross was a symbol of death by torture. Jesus is telling the people following him, you gotta be willing to die every day to follow me. You still don't believe me. All right, then let's look somewhere else. Ephesians 5 says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. It goes on to say, in the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. Ladies and gentlemen, I just got married. And if the last 8 months of being married has taught me anything, it is that this lesson is so hard to learn. That in order to succeed in my marriage, in order to love my wife well, I have to be willing to die to myself, to my own desires, to the things that make me a selfish person. I have to be willing to die to those things in order to have a successful marriage. When I'm walking out the door and my wife asks me to do something that the last thing on my mind, when my fuse is getting so short and I am just ready to snap at every little thing because I'm tired or angry or whatever it may be, when I feel like my preferences are more important than hers, God says, die to yourself. I mean, that's like, I'm sorry, what? Your marriage, your life is meant to be suicidal. To die to yourself. To live as Christ lived, sacrificing himself for the needs of others. I don't know about you, but, oh man. Right here. Right here.
Just what is it that you want to do?